The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Coturri, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
When he answers the phone, and the joke is that he's so old. That's how he learned. It's like one of those Simpson deep cut jokes.
Do love that so much.
The first ding of the recording.
Ahoy, hoy, and welcome
to a crossover event.
It's just a mashup of purely unplanned joy. Bedrock Conversations in the house.
Hello.
Someone pour the man a glass of wine.
Hi.
You like Zinfandel, Chris?
I do, yeah. Especially with barbecue.
Whoa.
Especially with everything, Chris. It's the year of Zinfandel.
According to the Winemakers podcast, which this is also an episode of.
There you go.
It's the first ever crossover.
Segue.
First and probably last.
We'll see how it goes.
Let's be real.
It's the two sides of Sonoma Plaza meeting in one in one chaotic.
So we've gathered here at City Hall.
Yeah, exactly.
Middle ground. The DMZ.
So somebody tell us why we were all called here today.
Well, should we go around the table and say who's here first too? Because I think that might give an insight.
Building the intrigue. Yeah, sure.
like
Go around the table. Morgan, who are you?
My name is Morgan Twain-Peterson.
MW.
MW. From Bedrock Wine Company.
Lots of pointing at people. Hi, I'm Alli. Alli Badar from also Bedrock Wine Company.
And I'm Chris Cotrell from Bedrock Wine Company. Ahoy, hoy, and welcome. There's copyright on that, Sam, so I'll be sending you a bill.
I am Sam Coturri, and I'm not going to pay that bill.
And I'm Katie Bundschu from Bundschu and Abbott's Passage.
And Brian's on the board from Winery 16600. And I'm Bart Hansen from Dane Cellars and the Winemakers Podcast. Let's get into this. What's going on, guys? Some of you have met previously.
A few times.
And you're here to share something with us. So,
We've actually
let's get into it.
Actually, I would say the dream started back in high school.
It's true.
No way.
Yes.
Like all good dreams.
Yes, like all good dreams.
A fever dream?
Riding the bus to Justin Siena.
Yeah.
So
I guess
Ooh,
everything
yeah.
about Justin Siena was a fever dream. So. And please note, this was a very short period when we were all on the bus on the way to Justin Siena High School when Sam, Katie, and I were going to school together. This was shortly before Sam got asked to leave that school.
It was mutual.
Wait, why did you get kicked out of Justin Siena?
I kicked them out, man.
We truly have three, Sonoma, royalty in this house.
That is
Multi-generational Sonoma Valley terroir of
I
people in
think
the
Katie
house.
has us.
Well, we got
beat by
9
about-
generations because we have Katie.
Exactly.
Is it really 9?
Well, no.
No.
2, 4, 5.
6.
6.
10 generations.
So Sam got kicked out of Justin because of arithmetic. So
Yeah, that was the least of my issues.
Sorbet.
Sorbet. Well, so really, maybe started in high school. It actually started because of Morgan and I shit talking over Instagram.
fair.
About regenerative farming posts. Well, what?
Well, wait a minute. I want to go back to the high school thing for a second. Okay, just real quick.
Okay.
Katie, you said that for a reason. Did the three of you actually at one time sit and realize that your families all worked in the wine business and that somehow you might all be working together someday?
No.
Okay.
No.
However, Morgan's story, I fully remember when not Bedrock, Ravenswood sold to Constellation.
Yeah.
And you came in and told me that story and I was like, what? Like I didn't understand.
Families can sell their winery?
Wineries can sell their winery? Like what does this even mean?
They're not beholden to you like an albatross around your neck.
I didn't know that. And then Sam, I don't even know. I just remember
we weren't really in the wine.
Yeah.
We were in the wine business, but
at that point you were more on the growing side.
Well, there was Coturri Winery was at at full capacity in those days.
But,
But also we were the, like, you know, especially at Justin.
Yeah, you were like one in a gazillion.
There was
a
a Fetzer, there was a Trefethen, there was a
Mondavi.
There was a Mondavi.
Yeah.
Right.
And then somewhere over in the parking lot getting high was a Coturri.
Did any of you in high school think that you'd follow in the family footsteps?
Yeah.
Nope.
No.
Well,
Great
Sam,
show, guys.
I mean, Sam, we know that you like to dabble in comedy, but you were thinking politics.
And by high school, it was journalism.
Journalism.
And then I got into journalism school and realized that I was going to have a hard time with telling the truth all the time.
And then Professor History over here to my right.
Yeah.
And then Katie, you were into like sport, what did you college sports?
Yeah,
Management?
I don't
The
really
bus.
know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be in the wine business.
Yeah.
So whatever got me out of California, that's what I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
The greatest rebellion of all time. Sam going from organic hippie growing of grapes to lobbying in Sacramento.
I
Lobbyist.
knew more than one way to tie my tie. At one point in my life.
Wow. I didn't. You wore a tie?
Exactly.
Did you have like one of those handkerchiefs you put in
pocket
your...
square? I had a pocket square.
Well, he was doing politics in Nevada, so I imagine this was a bolo tie.
I had a bolo tie. No, and I knew the 4 1/2 Windsor.
Yeah, there you go.
I could not do either of them now. Great clip-ons.
That's good.
Well, bringing us back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
Let's focus.
It was cover crop season.
It was cover crop season.
It was mustard season.
It was kind of Earth Day conversations
Yeah.
coming up, and then we just were. Morgan said I was talking to Sam. I was talking to Morgan, and then we all just decided to have a lunch and talk about something.
Cool.
Whereas I was peer pressured into drinking wine in the afternoon. But
I think I
It
got
was.
both of you actually.
You did.
you
Mhm.
Representatives
No,
of
and
the wine industry.
I think what we realized is like obviously, we all have really deep roots here. Sam's dad started farming in the mid to late 70s here. My dad started Ravenswood in 76. Katie's family has been here since the 19th century. And so we're very aware of the history that's so embedded in Sonoma Valley. And I feel like has gotten kind of increasingly overlooked because people kind of forget that Sonoma Valley was very much the hotbed of the wine industry as it was developing in Northern California. Very much so, even much more so than the valley to the east. And even like
Sacramento?
well, that valley too. But I mean, it was estimated at one point that in the 1880s, there was more grapes planted in Sonoma Valley than the rest of Sonoma County writ large. And when you think about how small Sonoma Valley is vis-a-vis the rest of Sonoma County, anybody who's driven from Healdsburg to Sonoma will know. That's pretty remarkable in terms of how intense and how much the tradition of viticulture and winemaking has been absolutely like key to Sonoma Valley. And then on top of that, we have an incredible tradition of farming here. So if you look at, going back to, Phil starting to, grow organically in the 70s.
The wine that I'm making Chris drink is from the 40th year that Phil farmed organically at Dos Limones, so 2019. So 79.
And that's
to Bob Kennard's,
which provided the produce for the Chez Panisse for years and years and years. And so we started just
Mike
kind of still
Benzinger.
does. Yeah, the Benzingers.
The Benzingers with Biodynamic.
There's been a lot of leading traditions here. I mean, honestly, Jason Jardine up at Hansel and 14 really is like the farthest ahead in terms of the regen movement, which is something that Katie and I have sort of followed in the footsteps of. So we started like doing
just real quick, and because I gave note to the Mike Lee and Marty and John Sheila, they had 130 acres certified organic in 1996, 97.
Yeah, way ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, of course, Corbell turned it all back to
Yes.
conventional.
Yeah.
But
And I mean, but what's wild, speaking of sparkling though, is we realized that even now, like Gloria Ferrer is in like year 2 or 3 of conversion, which for
I think they might be certified,
are
right?
they? Yeah. Because Maya was there still. Maya Comas was still there when they started the conversion. So they must be.
Yeah.
very close.
Very close.
So, but
They
anyways,
haven't-
just in terms of like sparkling wine production out in Carneros. So we started like looking at these numbers and we were like, okay, so California is one of the leaders in the agricultural space, and about 5% of acreage in agriculture is farmed organically. The national
Is
average
that all ag?
That's all ag. The national average is 1%.
Wow.
And we were like kind of running acreage totals between like all the vineyards that we oversee, that, Sam's Family Farms, and throw on like Donham and like all these other places. Monte Rosso, which is in year 3 of conversion. And all of a sudden we're like, wow, we're at like 20%, maybe 20+% of all vineyards in Sonoma Valley are farmed either organically, biodynamically, or regeneratively.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's something that's pretty unique and cool, and feels like is both adheres to sort of like the story of Sonoma Valley being a leader within the industry, but also like really like taking farming responsibly and sort of like trying to talk about, farming for the future and the next generation.
So we said, how do we tell this story? Especially in the time when, the wine stories out there are mostly terrible.
Doom and gloom.
Yeah. And we're like, people are buying these wines. People want these wines. People want to hear about how they're farmed. It's, the growth of in California wine is in organically grown grapes. So we came up with a crazy idea. Katie.
Oh, of course.
Toss it to
me. The diplomatic one.
Yeah.
So we decided to put together an event on August 17th in San Francisco at the Fort Mason Center called S.O.R.B.E.T.
What does S.O.R.B.E.T stand for?
Sonoma, Organic, Regenerative, Educational.
Biodynamic.
Oh, I forgot the B. How could I forget a B? Oh my God. Okay, let's start that over again. Sonoma, Organic, Regenerative, Biodynamic, Educational, Tasting.
Yeah.
S.O.R.B.E.T. The great S.O.R.B.E.T tasting.
Yes.
Which means tasting.
Favorite sorbets, everyone?
The one that we're going to have there from Sweet Scoops that they don't know they're going to make yet.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, Joe and Remy.
We could come up with some type of test where you have to say sorbet 10 times and Gunlock Bundschu Gewürztraminer.
Yeah. If you can't say Gunlock Gewürztraminer, sorbet, you shouldn't be driving.
Yeah, something along those
Sam
lines.
can't even say it once. So.
That's why they kicked me out of Justin Siena.
But anyway, we felt like this would be a great event to bring consumers together and just bring people together in the wine industry to talk about all of these different ways that Sonoma Valley is approaching farming and being a leader in that space. So collectively, with Alli's help, who is like, oh my gosh, she's the savior in this group.
I was watching her on her computer during our meeting before this, and it's just like,
yeah.
Alli, do you want to give a little quick background of how you ended up here and this group of people?
How are you hurting these cats?
I was born on a Monday. No, I'm just kidding. I joined Bedrock, full-time this past year, but I've been around interning and doing various things, and helped out with various HVS events before, the Historic Vineyard Society. We've had a tasting at Fort Mason last year, and we'll have one again this year. Helped out with Chris's wedding, planning things.
But you're burying the lead. You also went to UC Davis.
Oh,
and,
yes.
You have a pretty serious wine research and cellar viticultural background.
Yeah. Thank you for being my hype man when I'm bad at that myself. I was in the tech world for a bit, and then decided I wanted to get into wine. So decided that the way to do that at the level I wanted to was to go really intensely into the research, because I liked science. So I went to UC Davis. I studied mitigation of smoke taint there in the Anita Oberhoster lab, and that was great. Graduated and had fallen in love on my journey there with kind of old vine viticulture and regenerative farming. And then I was like, hey, Morgan, can I come work harvest with you? And then stuck around, worked a season in the cellar, and did, as a cellar intern, did a season in the vineyards as a vit intern, and then came on as the enologist last October. And now I'm here helping out with planning this tasting.
I would also point out that prior to tech, you are also a professional dancer.
Yes.
So there's a choreography joke to be made with putting together all of it.
It's all very orchestrated. The show must go on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, Alli, in the baseball reference, a 5-tool player.
Yes.
I don't think that encapsulates everything. I think you're probably at least an 8 to 9 tool player when it comes to the wine business and general life.
Thank you so much.
Swiss Army knife too is
Swiss
another,
Army knife,
another metaphor.
One of the big ones.
Totally.
The one I always wanted and never got.
Yeah,
It definitely has a corkscrew.
Okay.
And tweezers.
And the little toothpick on the other side. You always lose.
Yeah, you always.
Let's do this, because this tasting is focused on farming, not a specific wine, but also it is a specific place. So it's a farming plus place-based tasting.
Yeah.
We have 3 wonderful wineries at the table. Does everyone want to go for, of course, Bart, I'm sorry.
Quite all right.
Do you grow grapes?
I do not grow grapes.
Okay.
I buy grapes from very good growers.
Right. We need to talk about some.
Sitting at the table.
Yeah.
Your contract is renewed.
I was going to say.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you need the fruit or not.
It's there.
It's funny though. I've actually, one way or another, bought grapes from all 3 of you.
Yeah, that's
true.
That's cool. Why don't you guys go around maybe and talk about the farming philosophies? Because also you said regenerative, organic, and biodynamic. So also you have 3 different farming philosophies within, or core farming beliefs and practices. Do you want to talk a little bit about how each of you looks at farming?
I believe, and I think this is why we're all sitting at this table, is that philosophically we're coming from the same place, which is that we know that our wines will be better if we're putting more back into the ecosystem of our vineyards than we're taking out, than we're extracting. And so happy to talk like practices, practice. But I think that's what brought this all together is like, it doesn't, and why we're being inclusive and inclusive of people who aren't necessarily certified with this, because the certifications, the titles, the names of these farming practices is less important to why we're here than the fact that in Sonoma Valley, we're talking a patchwork of 2,500 acres or so, maybe more, that is all farmed with this philosophical standpoint of putting more in than we're taking out. And when you look at that, and maybe we'll have to put a map together when we actually get to
I would
this,
love to,
of all the different places from the lowest lands of Carneros to the top of Moon Mountain to the end of Kenwood, that it really like creates this patchwork of symbiotic relationships between all of these properties that lift up the entirety of what we're doing, but really the entirety of what Sonoma is doing.
What I think that we're kind of trying to capture, what I feel like, even if it's been relatively unsaid in some ways, there's a real movement going on in Sonoma Valley. And I feel like you see that just in the excitement. You see the number of younger wineries that are coming in that are focusing on these practices. And it runs the gamut from sort of like more people on like the nattier side all the way to extremely established 6th generation old wineries,
Hey,
so
that's good luck, Bundschu.
Good luck. But like just running the gamut, which I think really says something about what the overall ethos is. And like here, the baseline for this is organic, in some ways. And then, whether that's via biodynamics or you're building in some more other practices that are, related to the philosophies of Rudolf Steiner, or whether it's regenerative organic, which deals with, takes into account a little bit more things like tillage and carbon sequestration and animal integration and people and stuff like that. They're all like wound together, and they all come from, I think, the same general, as you're saying, Sam, the sort of same general like core philosophy, and the fact that so many of us are embracing that. And when you look at like the number of producers I think that we're going to be able to like put into this room, like that's really cool.
Yeah, it speaks a lot. I think also I'm sitting across from Alli and I see her awesome shirt, which we use a lot. Farm like the world depends on it. Sam said it. We're all coming from that same space of making sure we leave this better than what do I want to say?
You got it.
Yeah, leave it better.
Yeah.
And for us, that's like how we've approached it too. I mean, it's kind of funny to think regenerative organic with the 6th generation wine growing family, because we think in things of generations. Like, we want to make sure that we can live on the land for future generations. So why would we want to do anything that harms it? But it's just, I think it's a time and a place. And especially now, it's like farming like the world depends on it.
You know, and you think about 6 generations there's probably only like a generation and a half, maybe a little more, that didn't farm this way, right?
Probably.
I mean, like, you go back to pre-World War II Rhine farm, and, you know, they were farming organically because that's what there was,
that's
right?
That's what they knew. Yeah, exactly.
So in a lot of ways, this is, you know, returning to the history of Sonoma, and, you know, caring about the way that you're treating your land, because that's what you have.
Yeah.
You didn't have, you know, the Monsanto salesman come in with, you know, something that will fix whatever problem that you created last season.
Yeah.
Historian, when did like sort of the conventional chemical farming actually come into real play in agriculture?
Do you just call him historian?
Yeah.
My ears perked up. So my week has been made.
Because it was pre-World War II when chemicals started, because I know that's...
I mean, the first real chemical concoctions sort of... what's interesting is so much of this stuff came out of war, right?
Yeah.
So, like, but really, like, when we really started seeing, like, herbicide and strip sprays being used, one of the ways we can actually usually date vineyards based on vine architecture is where the crown position is. Because if it's crowned up above about 2.5 feet, that means that they were trying to get the herbicides underneath the vine. So to us, that means that vineyard was always planted usually post 1945. Not a lot of vineyards were being planted during the war years. And then, but yeah, I mean, and then that's when the whole, the chemical revolution really started in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. But it is something that I have to like remind myself of constantly, is like, in the scope of the realm of human existence in farming, like what we have done to alter the world very much for the negative, even if it came from a point of trying to like feed populations and everything, all that has really just been done in the last 60 years. Mm-hmm. And so like the way that we're starting to rethink about farming now from a progressive is, how do we sort of learn from some of the things that we were doing wrong, and then also look back to how people were farming earlier, but also combine that with modern science and create a way in which we can start regenerating landscapes, rebuilding soils, and sort of undoing some of the damage that was done with good intent, but also as a lot of damage was done. And so I feel like that's sort of what we need to be. That's sort of like what we're always thinking about. Like, you think about when Bedrock was planted in 1888, its soil organic matter was not 0.5%, which is kind of what the standard heavily conventionally farmed soil organic matter is now. It was probably 4 or 5%. So that had better water holding capacity, better water infiltration, better carbon cycling, all that stuff. But soils have been denuded so much that we now are in a position where it's our generation's responsibility to almost like, roll that back.
Katie, since you're the longest...
You're going to make me follow that?
Yeah, no.
Feels like high school all over again.
You're the longest generational winery here.
Mm-hmm.
And how long you've been converting to regenerative, and when did you get cert?
So we got certified in 2022. And so we started farming, like, we have always essentially been farming organically, but we started actually working towards getting that certification.
So even before you were on board officially at Gun Bun, they were being farmed organically? Because I guess my question was there any resistance from the previous generations of kind of going into this new farming sort of territory with regenerative, but you guys were farming organically
prior to that? Yes. I mean, yes, of course there's resistance. I mean,
is this the part of the show where we trash on our fathers?
I know.
Exactly.
I'm here for it, right?
No, but I think it's useful or interesting to hear, because I think there's a lot of second, third generation farmers across different crops that probably want to progress their farming, but there are conversations that happen within families that create barriers that have to be overcome to sort of improve farming. So I'm curious how that conversation went and how ultimately you got to this place of being one of the first ever regenerative certified vineyards in the world.
one of 16 globally.
There you
That's
go.
what it is.
That's not very many.
No.
No.
But it's also a relatively new certification, which
Yeah.
only started in 2017. I think that's a really loaded question. And I mean, I have a couple thoughts. Like, one of the things, my dad is a farmer first and foremost. And at the end of the day, you know, he was utilizing things in which he thought was the best way to get cash and make cash at the end of the day, and survive. And so always that was what he kind of, in order to keep us going and alive and living on this farm. And then ultimately with my brother and I, and our cousin Toll at the time, who is a vineyard manager himself, we started talking about like seriously converting to organic and what that would mean overall, and what type of resources it would take, because we've talked about it in the tasting. There's a lot of people that are farming in an organic way, but not necessarily have submitted for certification, because that does take, and that's an investment there to do that. And so the conversation with my dad, I think we're still having that conversation with him, because there's a few different principles that he doesn't understand coming from when he was farming, that now we're starting to like tell him what the data and the science says. But it's an ongoing conversation and an education with him, and he's not against it. He's never really been against anything that we've done, but probably stuff Jeff has done, but not stuff I've done.
Now we've reached the part of the show where we trash on our brothers.
So I mean, I think but he's on board. Like he gets it, and he recognizes that it's what we need to do.
I mean, I think that you brought up the economic sustainability of this too, which is often not included in this conversation, and is incredibly important. I mean, Sam, your dad was the first organic focus farmer in Sonoma.
79.
So he made it obviously economically viable, but
I think some of his clients might dispute that.
Define viable.
But I mean, what are some of the challenges with converting to these systems when it comes to economic viability? And I think it's probably changed a lot in the last even 5 years.
You know, I mean, when you look at, particularly when it comes to like herbicides, but most of the chemicals that are used in conventional farming, they're shortcuts. They're labor savers, and you know that's the first thing that, you know, when you talk about somebody who's converting their vineyard from conventional to organic, is how much more weed control costs when you're not spraying Roundup on, you know, under the vine rows. Mm-hmm. So you know that's the biggest challenge probably, is just it's more labor intensive. But I think early on what we discovered in, you know, Dos Limones in 1980 is by doing that, by being out there in the vineyard more with people, you're able to have a greater attention to detail and sort of hone the vineyard and hone each vine a little bit more than rather just another tractor pass. So, you know, that quality immediately starts going up. And it's not just because you're farming better in the soil, but because there's more eyes and hands on each vine through the growing season.
And always in the back of your mind, you don't have something to fall back on.
Right. Yeah, you don't have
so
that.
You have to be better organized,
Mm-hmm.
which should make you a better farmer, right?
But to the economics point, that's, you know, kind of why we're doing this, right? Is this is a difficult story to tell. It's hard to talk about your farming all the time. You know, it's what we do, and I know it's what you guys do. But as far as like getting that message out in a really concise way that, you know, builds on what we're doing here, and makes it so, you know, we can sell our wine better and sell more wine. You know, that's why we're bringing together this amazing coalition of wineries and brands and vineyards to build that critical mass a little bit more.
I think it's part of getting the conversation rolling in some way, right? Because people, like, you know, if you go and you buy organic milk versus non-organic milk, it's going to cost you $3 more. You know, that's like, if it's food stuff, it definitely adds up over time. But when it's wine, which is sort of a luxury good, I think there's a different story that needs to be told about what goes into it and what really sets it apart. And it's also why wine is so fascinating, is that you can get so upstream. You can go all the way to where the grapes were grown, why they were planted, how they're grown, all the way to the bottle, which is amazing. There's no other real libation like that except maybe coffee, but even that's tricky. But we do also have to be like, hey, like it costs $300 to $400 a year to do, under vine, like weed maintenance if you're, herbicide free versus $30 for a pass of 3 different herbicides in a cocktail. So it's just sort of like, we need to be able to like tell that story and why what we're doing is different and why it makes a difference. And I think that there's any number of things, particularly when you start looking at all the data around, nutrition levels in foods that are grown in organic, regenerative, and biodynamic systems versus those grown in conventional systems, and nutrient density and all the other stuff. It's really being played out in the realm of other foods, but it's those same things still apply to wine. Obviously, we can't make a nutritional, statement about wine, but at the same time,
it makes your fermentations better, though.
It makes your fermentations better,
right?
and there's still residuum of what is used in vineyards, or lack of residuum within what you're putting into your body, and that's important to people and for people, and I think people want to know that.
Well, when you go and buy milk, you expect that the organic milk is going to cost $2 a carton more or whatever. When you buy wine, you don't know that, right? Like, it's not necessarily that all the organically grown, regeneratively farmed wines are more expensive than the conventional ones.
Right.
In fact, it's mostly the opposite. And there's a whole lot of like, real conventional gnarly farming hiding in the $150 bottles and up, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's part of what all this is also is the competition is not a level playing field the way it is on like the grocery store, that like, here's the organic section in the produce, department, and here's the non-organic section in the produce department.
It's a great point, because it's always one of the biggest issues with marketing wine and talking about wine with consumers is that price does not equate to quality or farming. So I guess S.O.R.B.E.T is sort of one of the ideas is to, if these wines are in a room together, there is a core philosophy that people can attach themselves to.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said.
Bart, you buy grapes. You're not a grower, although your years at Kenwood grew a lot of grapes there.
Yeah.
Have you, with your growers, because I mean, for decades now you've been working with growers, have you seen a change in attitude or willingness of you going to growers being like, I only want to work with organic grapes? Are you willing to make the conversion? Have you advocated successfully to a grower of a vineyard that you really loved making wine from, but said this vineyard could be better if you did X?
I mean, I have a couple people that I've certainly talked to about that. And I think what I see from them is they're looking for me to say, if I don't buy enough to really move that pendulum, right? But if I'm willing to help pay for the up cost, then they're willing to think about it. But again, I'm buying a portion of a vineyard from somebody, so I kind of end up going along the way it's going. But I'm at the point now I'm just trying to seek out people that are farming organically or some other way. I have a couple of vineyards that don't do that yet. We have the conversations. Maybe they'll get there. So that's kind of where I stand.
Will you think you're going to adjust your buying on that in the future?
I mean, I've already adjusted it in that I'm not searching out those other ones, but I have a couple of existing growers that I've purchased grapes from, and we've had the conversations, and they're not prepared to do it yet for economic reasons.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to economics. That's the thing is like, I think we have one grower in common, and it's and I think it's just strictly in economics at some point where it's like also like it's truly like, I feel like it's sort of incumbent upon us to be telling the story of like why this farming is so important, why this farming demands attention, and then that is actually going to be the tide that lifts the boats enough that like growers like that we can be like, we can now sell these wines for $50 a bottle. We can now pay you the extra $600 a ton to cover the additional costs of farming organically. It's like, it's sort of how you affect the whole ecosystem in some way. And I think that's what we're trying to sort of elevate the conversation about.
Well, that's one of the fun things that we're doing with this tasting is the vineyard tables. We have 3 of the 4 confirmed historical Sonoma Valley vineyards that are, you know, large and important in the ecosystem of Sonoma Valley wine, starting with Bedrock, Montecillo with the Guthrie, with Blair and family are doing up there, and then Rossi Ranch. There's one other one that's out there, and we're working with our friends at the Gallo family on a Monte Rosso table, because that, you know, when you talk about the 2,500 acres gets there, pushes that
300 acres there.
So that's, you know, to that point of like, you know, showing other growers that there's a platform for these wines and motivation to help them farm better, so that, you know, they can sell their grapes for a little bit more, and then the wineries can sell their wines a little bit more, and you know, this rising tide lifts all of us.
Well, I think everyone's talking about how do you differentiate yourself in this sort of challenging wine market, and you know, I thought this idea is great because it's a real differentiator that actually has substance to it, right?
It's like, a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And if you're making wine in Sonoma Valley and you want to stand out, be a part of S.O.R.B.E.T, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I also think it's just so important for Sonoma Valley, because oftentimes we get lumped into Sonoma County, which is fine. But to be able to, we were the first AVA in Sonoma County. We were the first, produced the first commercial Cabernet, was here in Sonoma Valley, and now we've always been at the forefront.
Is that a Gunluck Bundschu Cabernet?
It was not a Gunluck Bundschu Cabernet, no.
Buena Vista?
I think it was Buena Vista.
Yeah, the first bonded winery in California.
Yes, and the first bonded winery, of course.
Martini would be my guess, even though Napa winery, but with Monte Rosso fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 20s.
37 is when they bought.
Leave it to the historian.
Not the, just historian.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Sorry, omit the just historian. But I think that's
historian. Is it historian MW?
That's just going too far.
I have a question for Alli, because did you go to UC Davis, Bart? You did.
Wow, Chris. Not even close.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
He's driven by.
I've worked with a lot of people that went to UC Davis.
Katie, did you go to UC Davis?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Go
So
Go Buffs.
Alli is the only one with real education in the wine business.
Oh boy.
Because UC Davis obviously changed a lot in the last 50 years of how they talk about wine and farming. What's the conversation happening in UC Davis right now when it comes to the S.O.R.B.E.T philosophy, that blanket, that umbrella of farming right now? Because I mean, obviously UC Davis is one of the most influential institutes in the world when it comes to wine.
Yeah, definitely. So there's several conversations that happen kind of all within that ecosystem in a lot of the classes. So our like viticulture programming at UC Davis was kind of very focused on conventional ideas and things to look at. But then we also had an additional course that we could take that was a partnership with Steve Mathiasen that was all on organic farming that was offered as part of our coursework. And that was super cool to be able to discuss with him. And then there's also work being done in the Soil Science Institute at UC Davis with several of the researchers there, where they're working on more like regenerative cover cropping research and other things on improving like soil organic matter and improving microbial communities in the soil. That is part of the coursework as well. And so it's definitely become a lot more part of the main curriculum there, that people are at least discussing these things and putting forward the opportunities for folks that are interested to learn and talk about. And I think that that's like where it's headed. There's also a lot of, like I said, conventional discussions and talking about that in terms of just a research perspective. But I think the conversation has definitely shifted.
But that Mathiasen course is optional.
It is optional.
So
not required.
But I'd also just add that like UC Davis has created a professor of agroecology.
Yeah.
With Kelsey Brewer. And so like that, I mean, that's in like agroecology is sort of like a fancy academic way of basically talking about regen in many ways. It's a fully ecological, sort of integrated systems, approach to farming. So the fact, when I saw that they actually like have added a professor for that, like that was like, that's a good step.
How long ago was that?
I don't know when Kelsey joined, but there, I know also really good research going on with Kendall Jackson, with Jackson Family right now. And because a lot of this has to be like who's going to fund it, of course. But it seems like there's more movement towards there.
Yeah, definitely. And conversations within the main coursework about like integrated pest management and using like animals in the vineyards and things like that are just becoming more, whether or not they're just, talking about them because they're marketing things for many vineyards, but or not, that's different to be said, but they are discussing it much very readily.
Jake and Casey are giving a presentation tomorrow morning to a bunch of UC Davis students on all the basically doing the same regen discussion we did at Napa Vid Tech last week.
So for a winery, and if you're trying to get your grower to buy in, what would the three of you, what would be your recommendation? What does that conversation look like on your side? And I understand your estate, so it doesn't really matter, but sometimes you might sell some grapes. I guess do you understand the question I'm trying to ask?
Well, I would say the main thing that
just real quick, we have a bunch of growers in the Valley who are farm conventionally, and they're looking for places to sell grapes. And I imagine there's probably people that would buy grapes if they were organic.
Well, that's the thing, is the only major growth sector right now in the California wine industry is for wines made from organic grapes. That's truly one of the main things. So that in and of itself is a pretty good place, I think, to start the conversation.
Motivator.
And I would say even last year I was having this conversation with Sam and Phil, and you look at wine business classifieds, you see all the fruit that's around, and you see that within the Valley, a lot of the people that have historically been growing larger volumes for commodity, selling to Constellation and Treasury and, Gallo, et cetera, and have been doing so conventionally, they're the ones that seem to be the ones kind of hanging in the wind right now with a lot of fruit that's uncontracted. Last year, outside of some virus Merlot, we essentially sold every grape off Bedrock Vineyard. And I know that you guys sold every grape off of Enterprise Vineyards. And so that's in the context of, my dad thinks that this is potentially and the Silicon Valley Bank report, it's the worst since 87, 88 in the wine industry.
Did you see this article? Talk about a gloom and doom. 60% of Amador County fruit went unharvested last year.
The Mike Dunn article.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons for that, and I'd want to dive into the numbers more, but
different podcast.
That's more of a Bedrock conversation podcast than a winemaker's show.
So I think that's that's part of where you have the conversation, it's kind of where the market is going. And I think that actually just is also I think we're all obsessed with sort of there's clearly a generational shift going in terms of the way that people are buying wine right now. And, Chris, you can back this up as well, because you're on the road a lot. But I found the last couple business trips I've been on, if I'm dealing with a sommelier or a buyer who's under the age of 38, farming is one of the top 3 questions they ask.
Why did you put that line 1 year above my age?
just to
sneak it under there, so I feel old.
But if you talk to a buyer that's over 55, farming's just not even for the most part, there's a couple exceptions, it's not even part of the conversation. So to me, that's just just collecting sort of data in real time as we're out and about, that really says something important. And that's, I think for those of us who believe this truly to our core, that farming this way is important, this is also a way that we can also particularly hopefully message and find people that are looking for wines that are made in a way that they value ethically.
I even think beyond just sommeliers, because I know that's the language you guys all speak to, but in looking at, retailers, because, some of our wine does go to larger retailers, the RFPs are also calling for wines that are organic. They're looking large stores are looking for organic
RFP?
wines. Requests for proposals.
Got it.
So,
I should know that.
I know that Whole Foods, for example, I just sat on a call for Whole Foods for
I got that email.
August through August of this year to August of next year. And all the wines that they're looking for, like the number one is organic. So that's, again, speaks to the opportunities of where, convincing a grower should go is, and that's where you can move some volume and hopefully make money as a winery is in these larger off-premise stores.
And they're operating on real-time data sets that they're getting back.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that gives you a real-time idea of like where people are buying.
Well, and I will counter I think there are plenty of over 55 professional wine buyers and consumers that care about farming and organic farming. But I do think Brian's pointing out himself.
54, right, Brian? 54.
Yeah.
But it's much more universal with a younger demographic.
It's expected.
Yeah. Perfect way to put it.
Baseline.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just another thing that's cool about having this tasting at Fort Mason, like the events we've had there at the past, we just have a bunch of foot traffic, people that are around the area that are either young or in whatever position in the area that come by and they're like, what is this tasting? And we're able to probably, hopefully there, tell them about it and get the conversation out there, at least show the names of the wineries that are pouring there, hopefully invite them in the door. And
that was definitely part of our...
Yeah.
When we were first working this out over the slightly boozy lunch.
Right.
Hardly.
Compared
to old stories that I've heard from Jim Bundschu days.
No
we also are doing better than our parents on that, right? So.
It would have been much more financially prudent for us to do it at a beautiful setting like Abbott's Passage.
Right.
But part of it was to bring it to people a little bit. And we all know that people are having traffic issues getting, it's hard to get people up here anymore. There's lots of, reasons for that. But
I mean, also just if you come up for a day, stay in a hotel, it's expensive, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it's like just trying to lower the cost, the barrier to entry as much as possible. And the Fort Mason space is gorgeous too, right on the water there.
Yeah. And
also I think that's sort of how we are looking at ticket sales for this as well. I mean, we haven't really gotten into the wineries that are going to be there, but also we're trying to make the ticket price really on the low enough that people can really get an incredible experience. Because I think that there's the possibility for there to be 35 to 40 different wineries represented in this room, spanning from the original, the OGs, the Hansels, the Caymans, the Good Luck Bundschus of the world, all the way to sort of some of the more new wave, the Fresh and Co, the Marionis, all that sort of captures the whole gamut of Sonoma Valley, which I think is pretty cool because usually going to Jack Spore's wedding last year from Fresh, that's truly the gamut of people that are at that wedding. It's a small enough community that we know all of these people, and you really get to see a cross section of everybody that's kind of just all just into the same space, though, which is kind of cool. We can kind of have the essence of Sonoma Valley, and there's a lot of stories in that.
The range of price points, producer size, length in business that this thing is going to encapsulate is pretty astounding. I mean, go from the new guys and the startups to the Bundschus and sorry.
We're always the old ones.
It's a reflection on your father, Katie, not you.
It's you throw in that element of it, the farming element, those tiny little demographic, geographic area that we're pulling from. Just it's a pretty mind blowing collection.
Diverse tastings are always the best tastings, right? I mean, the only Cabernet tasting, it's a lot of Cabernet, I mean, I think always the best tastings are when you go to a portfolio show for a distributor where you get to taste a real diverse set of wines. And I think the portfolio show is sort of a really good analogy for this. It is the Sonoma Valley portfolio, the Sonoma Valley portfolio that has a through line to it. Instead of a distributor, the through line is how are you farming and how are you trying to improve community and soil health and be a leader for ag. One of the interesting things about regenerative farming is it really was much more popular in the ranching side, right, Katie? And now it's becoming more and more popular and talked about in vineyards. But in general, vineyards and viticulture and wineries can really lead the way with progressing farming, because it's an agricultural product that is going into a $30, $40, $50 ending up to the consumer product.
I love the
higher. Sam's going, putting the
$60, $70, $80 products.
What I always loved was John Sheila from Kenwood used to say, someone asked him, he goes, "Are you going to put organic on the label?" And it was a question of how you could do that at that point. And his whole thing was that wasn't that important. It was more, they were doing it for farm workers, for the people, and for the land. And, that's when I was opened my eyes about it. Like, they're not doing this for a marketing reason. Now, they eventually figured out a way to put it on the label, but that wasn't the priority.
Yeah. We all need to market though now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, I think maybe we got a little comfortable in the wine business.
Sure.
Right. Of being able to tell kind of whatever story we wanted to, or not be as collective in sort of how we market wines. And I think now it's way more important than ever to figure out a way to collectively and individually. Yeah. And again, like we've been talking about, organic, biodynamic, regenerative agriculture can be a marketing tool, but it comes from a real place of soul.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah. And I think figuring out a way to simplify it all, like we've talked about, you go to the grocery store and no one flinches about spending more money on anything organic because you just automatically know. But like, how can we tell them a simpler story with wine? And we already know wine is complicated in so many ways, but I think that's a challenge that we have as well. I
love just thinking about it off the top of my head here, like in all the nugget stores, which are pretty local, having a little sorbet section. Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. Or nugget Oliver's. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like having a little sorbet section at Sonoma's Best, something that people can go to that shelf. I mean, even like something with Whole Foods potentially, right? Like, I mean, it could even be a chain thing where.
Can we assign you that job, Chris? We assign jobs out for
based
everyone.
on me not knowing the acronyms, I feel like you'll be better at that.
Well, I missed the B. Right. So I'll do it. I'll get it right the third or fourth time.
But I mean, I think that also would benefit retailers, because I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Retail is an incredibly important part of wine storytelling and getting wines into consumers. I think having sections that are less based on, is this from Portugal? Is this from Napa? Is this or varietally based? I think it would be really cool to see more retailers focus on farming sections, right? And have an integrated diversity of places in the world that isn't just like, what variety is it? This way consumers can go to that area and really get to explore wines via quality farming.
You might be onto something.
We should do a tasting.
Yeah.
So who's in this sorbet tasting? A lot of.
Go through.
What date? What's the date again? Remind people of the date.
August 17th.
It's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday
in San Francisco.
It'll be foggy and cold. Yep. God willing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is for Mason, because Alli helped set up the HVS tasting last year. It is an awesome space.
Huge windows out on the bay, overlooking the harbor. It's beautiful.
It's pretty idyllic. But who's Bedrock Wine Company?
Bedrock will be 50% harvested by August 17th.
I think Under the Wire will be there as well, because we make Bedrock Vineyard Zinfandel. So we'll be pouring. Maybe we'll be the only bubbles there.
Gloria Ferrer, probably.
Oh, Gloria Ferrer is going to be.
But yes, right. Different ethos.
Yeah, who's confirmed, and who do we want to advocate to get in?
Well, we have. There's confirmations, and then we have people that have verbal confirmations, but have not submitted paperwork yet.
Filled out their applications. By the time this airs, they will be. By the time this airs, I will actually have filled out my application.
Yeah. Well, no, this is also
filled out my application.
This is also a good advocacy, right? Like, let's mention the producers that we want to get in, and all the listeners out there, shoot them an email and be like, "Hey, we want to see you at Sorbet."
There you go. Yeah. Good, Chris.
No, love that. I mean, so we already mentioned the vineyards, so it sounds like and also because your dad's enterprise farms so much stuff, we'll be able to have sort of like a table with individual people pouring there, maybe folks like maybe some of the Tony Biaggi wines, maybe like Reeds, like Tidings, like there's a number of people like that. Then Rossi Ranch will have a table, so that's very cool because there's a whole cross section of producers there that work with the fruit, including us now. Blair at Montecillo Vineyard is all over this. And so that means that we'll see who from that vineyard wants to pour. But, he sells to Di Costanzo and Arnott Roberts and Turley and us and a lot of other folks. Bedrock Vineyards. So I'm really hoping that Hardy Wallace will pour his skin fermented Semillon. But then we also have Bialy and Turley and other people that work with our fruit. And then Monte Rosso, we'll see what happens there. But then in terms of wineries, we've got
Bundschu, Abbott's Passage, Hansel. Hamel is verbally committed.
Corbin Cameron, Once and Future, Donham, Kivelstadt, hopefully Lassiter family. Rapri, hopefully, Cayman.
These are all verbal yeses.
Laurel Glen.
Yep.
And then Marioni.
And Jack at Freshco.
Buckland, his uncle. Will was going to be there. So, it's quite the cross-section of people and wines.
And really, we have been working at this for 2 weeks. So as of recording time. So
Once again, credit to how far this already is along to
Thanks, you guys.
And so if you are listening and you haven't heard of, we haven't bugged you yet, how do you sign up? If you're a winery.
Yeah. So we have a form for everyone to fill out for wineries. You'll have to submit the wines that you're pouring and some farming information just about how the vineyards that you work with are farmed.
We're checking receipts, people.
Yeah.
Seriously, right?
No, so legit, that should be said. So we don't require everybody to be certified, but we are reviewing everybody's PURs, which is pesticide use reports. So you can see if people are not certified organic, we can tell that they're farming to organic standards or not. So, and that's something that, you legally have to file. So every winery has them.
Yeah.
So once again, how do they sign up?
Yeah. So
email Alli.
Yes. You can email Alli at bedrockwineco.com and I'll get you all the information to get signed up. And we do need, those farming records and your commitment to pour some wine.
Alli, how do you spell your name?
Alli, Alli. Yes, thank you.
And then we're aiming to launch on Earth Day for consumers.
Well, this is Earth Day.
Oh,
we're dropping the show on Earth Day. Yeah,
we dropped the show on Happy Earth Day, everybody! Woohoo!
It turns out that a bunch of us in our 40s with kids and selling wine, it's very hard to get us all around the same table at the same time.
It's actually the biggest lift of this whole thing.
Yes.
Truly.
Yes.
Time that we can all meet.
Right.
So it's Earth Day. So
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Tickets are on sale.
Tickets are on sale on Eventbrite.
Yes, on Eventbrite. Tickets are $65 per person.
Very reasonable.
Very reasonable.
Yep.
So
For those wines,
it's
Thank you,
fucking
yeah.
the best deal ever.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to swear on your podcast?
Of course.
Okay, good.
And then, of course, we're all obviously hoping to provide discounts to our respected clubs for all the wineries or mailing lists or whomever. So we want to get as many people as possible.
So all you folks out there in podcast land that are planning trips to the Bay Area, to Sonoma, you might want to put this on your calendar.
What's the max number we're allowed to have in that room?
There are multiple maxes, but we've said 200.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If we sell more than 200, can we just move a wall or something? What happens?
There's just a little bit more insurance requirements that we need to get.
Details.
Park police, things like that. Details. But
we can go.
We can figure it out.
Yeah, let's crowd that room.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Makes a great gift.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bring
sales.
Bring your kid. Bring your kid who's maybe wanting to get into wine.
Oh, I was going to say not your young kid.
No, but I mean that's depends on what you define as young.
Under 30, under 39.
No, but it's always. I don't think people think about it enough. But this is an opportunity for a parent who wants to get their kid into wine. I think it is really important. The next generation. It's very cool at our pickup days. There are parents who've been buying our wine. I'm sure this happens to you, where they bring their kids along.
It. Yes.
And, they do it at pickup days. So they're only tasting, 6 or 8 Bedrock wines. But this is like a full room where they're going to see older legends to young people. The HVS tasting was incredibly diverse when it came to like an age group. So I think it's important
always,
all people that are young, people that are older. So I think that this is a great tasting to bring friends or family to, where they will get to have a diverse set of wines. And then if in that room, there'll be a style of wine that's hit someone.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly what I was going to say. There's going to be a wine in this room for every wine drinker, period. Like any price point, any style, any variety. I mean, that's just, you talk about that diverse tasting. It's going to be a crazy collection of wines. Yeah. I think we should auction off one bottle from each person or something.
Oh.
Put that on the
agenda for next 2 weeks.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So what does sorbet stand for again?
So good.
So good. I like that Katie tried to turn it into soiree earlier. So
I'm here for the soiree.
That's a good title. Like
organic
intergalactic.
The sorbet soiree.
The sorbet soiree.
Like a black tie event at Abbott's Passage.
I can see this in the future. Yes.
But seriously, what does it stand for again?
Sonoma Organic Regenerative Biodynamic Educational Tasting.
The sorbet tasting. Sonoma Organic Regenerative Biodynamic Tasting.
It's almost as bad as the wine brats.
Yeah.
That's for another podcast too.
Right, so
All right.
anything else?
Anything else? We
Buy tickets.
Buy tickets.
We'll have the
Tell
links.
your
will be
friends.
everywhere.
we'll have the links. We have the links.
We have links.
We have links.
We have links.
We
We
have
are
links.
speaking in future tense.
Follow all of our Instagram accounts. Every winery
It'll
that
be
we just
everywhere.
listed, it'll be everywhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, really, really looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast.
All the
It'll
way.
be way better than the bus ride to Justin.
I was going to say, I was like, how do we tie this back to the bus ride to Justin
Totally.
Sienna?
Oh my gosh.
I love to because Katie just has so much trauma of the bus leaving her behind.
I do. I can't talk about
Down Napa
the
Road to
bus.
catch
Oh my
the bus.
God, could we
Just
not go there?
chasing
I
down the
know,
bus.
wait for me. I was
I had-
already awkward to begin with, and then the bus just forgets you.
And then there was the year you were on crutches.
Yes.
I had the one bus driver who liked me, and then the one bus driver who hated me. He would make me sit in the front.
That's funny. Yeah.
Oh.
Sam Coturri goofing off in the back of the bus.
Yeah. Anyway, there you have it, folks.
How do you close
Full
the
circle.
Winemakers podcast? I mean, the
How do
Bedrock.
you close the Winemakers
We don't.
podcast?
We just keep going. How do you do it on the Bedrock?
Thanks everyone for being here at this table. It's an honor to spend time with you guys, and thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you at Sorbet. It's going to be great.
See you at Sorbet.
Signing off.